everybody, and welcome to the Kidney Coach YouTube channel. I am naturopath Fiona Chin, co-founder of Kidney Coach and Kaigenesis, a range of supplements designed to support people diagnosed with chronic kidney disease to lower creatinine and raise eGFR levels. And I'm joined again today by the beautiful, wonderful Stephanie Modavis. Stephanie joins me from the US. She is actually, we stole her. She's part of our Kidney Coach team, so she does all our support to patients who have been on the journey and looking at maybe needing some dialysis or going through dialysis, people that don't know how to navigate the medical system, and for people maybe looking at transplant. So for anyone who hasn't met the beautiful Stephanie before, Stephanie is a mindset coach, a yoga instructor, and really a very well seasoned and experienced kidney expert. I always say the best way to be an expert is to actually go through it, and Stephanie has decided this lifetime that she'll be an expert on all things kidneys, going through 2 transplants, dialysis, you name it, she's done it. And we've spoken about her journey, but Stephanie really had to learn how to advocate for herself and really learn how to navigate the medical system to get out of it so it was working for her rather than her being moved around like a ship in the night without a say in it, right, Steph?
That's right. I did that for a little while and it wasn't that pleasant, but I found my way. I found my North Star. And you're a part of that. You guys are a part of that.
Well, and now you get to be other people's North Stars, which is the always lovely way to get back. And we are very grateful that we have got you on the team. I feel like you just, because we're also high call medical trained, that just to have someone that as an embodied presence of what it's like. And, I say to my patients all the time, I'm like, you are the biggest expert of your body. Yeah. And then second to that, someone who's gone through the same thing that you have, just gives you such a huge advantage in just understanding the nuances and depths of what it's like to go through transplant and recover. And, I can't really speak to that apart from that's not the medical side. And you can speak to everything else, which I think people need, and they're not getting in the medical system as you experienced yourself.
Yeah. And I could have used somebody like myself when I was going through this. And at that time, they had just signed into law all of these, HIPAA policies. So I really was flying solo and I felt tremendously lost. And I think the biggest surprise about waiting so long on dialysis and then finally getting my kidney transplant was the hope was, okay, now you're better. And even though my labs looked better, my mind, my body, my psychology had just gone through 10 years of something that I didn't realize that I ordered on this lifetime menu. And I was, for the first time in my life, depressed.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, what just happened to me? So I think part of the reason I do advocacy and especially with individuals like yourself is because you understand there's more to the story.
And there has to be, you're not just a body.
That's right. Yeah. And I just want a little shout out to you for a second. 2 things before I start the presentation tonight. One is, I found you guys years ago and just looking for anybody in the alternative space that was doing any work around kidneys. And I remember finding you years ago and looking through your material. And as a yoga teacher and somebody who has invested in holistic health, I just thought, okay, thank you, God, that this organization exists. Just thank you so much. But lately, what I've been doing is I've actually been watching a lot of your videos on YouTube. And I've been going back and I'm like, oh my gosh, everybody in the community needs to see this. And I know what it's like when you're a little bit of an outlier. And sometimes the views aren't that high, or you're like, oh, are people not interested? And the reality is you're just a little ahead, and it's just difficult to kind of hold that space. But I just want to say again, as a patient, going back and watching your videos, I'm like, not a doctor ever talked to me about any of this stuff. And just so grateful for the work that you guys do. So yeah, I wanted to say that before I started the presentation tonight. So
thank you. Now, is this your lounge room? I feel like I look through the side and I'm like, is this yours? Because this is lovely if it's yours. So is this an image? Because I'm like, I'm moving, I'm coming.
Listen, there is not an ounce within my body that can truly lie. This is not mine. This is an image. And it was a generated image that a friend of mine had made just for some of my branding. So she did inspire it off of a gold velvet couch that I have, which you can't
Yes.
see right now because it's evening. But I do have a gold velvet couch back there. And then
That's
she
why
went
I thought
ahead
it
and
was your place. I looked, I'm like, I know that couch. That's your couch. I'm like, this is lovely.
it is lovely and it's inspiring to me. But as of right now, it is not that cool. So, but
Yeah,
I'm
I
grateful
bet
for what I have. So,
it
yeah. So something that I'm so passionate about, we've talked about it before. When I was 19, I started out with yoga as a means to deal with my early childhood stress and trauma, and finding yoga, which organically led into wanting to eat better, which organically led into finding healthy community, which organically led into this health community that I never really anticipated when I first started to get into yoga, but it definitely formed who I am today. And a
Mm.
big part of my yoga practice and study was around what we call the subtle or the energy body. And, in some forms of medicine, they say this is woo woo, it's hard to document. But I think you and many others know now that the biofield is real, that quantum physics is a real thing, quantum mechanics, and we're starting to catch up and have the actual ability to create science around what actually is going on. But, there's something about what the yogis knew back in the day. They were channeling
Yep,
something that was to be. It's just we're the ones that haven't completely caught up with it.
totally
One of
agree.
the yeah, one of the classes I used to teach was on the energy body, and it was from the ancient mapping called the chakras. Again, this is something some people will poo-poo it, say it's too woo-woo, but if you have a good teacher, and I was fortunate to study with a woman named Anadea Judith, who's considered the modern master of the chakra system, and I studied with her one-on-one, and the books and the material and the science backing this mapping system is really extraordinary, and it may not be perfect, but either is medicine. And it's a dang good way to try to understand how your subtle body works. Sadly, today, especially here in the West, we're not that tuned in to subtlety. Everything has to be quite dramatic, and
Yeah.
we have to get hit over the head with a 2x4 to start to pay attention to like how we feel.
True story right there.
Right? So for me and my process, I started to really attune myself to this very subtle energy level. And today I thought, I'm going to do this presentation, and we really have to start to merge these amazing fields, which is happening. We talk about mind, body, and spirit all the time, but
Yeah.
there's other layers to this. But what I think is a little bit challenging, the nuance is that all of these dimensions of wellness require a little bit different of an attunement or an awareness. So it's almost like there's an awareness on the body level. There's an awareness on the spiritual level. There's an awareness on the quantum biology level. There's an awareness on the emotional level. Now, somebody who's watching this, who's maybe trying to overcome and heal from their kidney disease, they might be saying, I ain't got time for that. I'm trying to survive here. And when you have CKD, you and I know this from experiencing chronic illness too, is that when you're in a very serious moment, your focus is on one dimension, and that's how do I live through this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So I never want to diminish that we're in survival mode very often when we're facing CKD.
Yeah.
Um, I think if anybody is like me, and I've come to learn that we have a lot of similarities, human beings, is that I'm a little bit of a control freak. And I tend to worry at times when I don't need to worry. And I tend to worry about things that I can't control. And
Mm.
it's been a real, real difficult process for me to start to lighten my load around the worry around the disease or illness or recovery process. It's like you start to get single focused on that thing, and you can't see anything else around it.
Mm.
So energy work and subtle work is somewhere outside that concentric circle of I have CKD. but it's so interesting and important, and it provides, in my opinion, the meaning behind all this. So if you can find something to tap into that stimulates you spiritually to give you the resilience you need to get through this with the least amount of pharmaceuticals or depressive states or nervous breakdowns, existential crises, that all still may happen. But if you can still tap into this subtle energy stuff and start to attune yourself introspectively, it really gives you a profound education. It totally makes sense. And again, it can just provide you meaning, which is opposite, I think, of just constantly being in worry.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree with that. It's been such an important part. And I think as humans, we're meaning makers, right? So if you're staying in the one dimensional, then the meaning becomes, what did I do wrong? How's my body failing me? Versus having another narrative that's bigger than you, bigger than the disease. It helps you to move out of that, like you said, survival state, but also victim state. I think it's, I mean, go ahead and throw a pity party. I still throw myself a pity party once a week, but I think it's important to acknowledge those feelings, but I think it's important not to unpack and stay there, because there is always so much that we can do.
I can't tell you, in my advocacy work and with myself too, and I know that we've discussed this before, is, when you're on a journey of CKD and it's can get dire, we always hope for regeneration and recovery. And there are amazing new therapies that I am so excited about, and just protocols and things you're doing and things others are doing that are really starting to, break the 4-minute mile we talked about of like, can kidneys regenerate? So I love this, but I myself couldn't heal myself at the time I was sick with what I was offered. And I've had 2 kidney transplants. And I can't tell you how many people that I speak to who are they're just on that edge. They're towing that line between like, I'm at 15% or I'm at 17% GFR. My doctor wants to talk to me about dialysis, or my doctor wants to talk about transplant. And I am totally guilty of this. I was like, talk to the hand. No,
Yeah.
thank you. And I think behind that was, again, me wanting to really override my experience and control it. And it was a lot of ego. And although I realized I wasn't going to give up, I was still going to try for healing. I was never going to give up healing. But the amount of people I talk to who break down in tears, and I know what to say because I've experienced it. And I say, if you happen to go through a transplant evaluation, best case scenario, you say, I don't need it, but thank you so much. I said, but if you decide to go through that evaluation, you didn't fail. And immediately tears start flowing like the river, just tears. It's like somehow there's this just like, I couldn't do it. I couldn't be perfect. I couldn't figure it all out myself. And so for anybody watching who is teetering on that, I know the resistance. I know the feeling all too well. It doesn't hurt to just get an evaluation. And if you ever decide that you want to go through it, it's because it takes about a year, 6 months to a year. So I always tell people, just go through the process and just put it in your back pocket, and hopefully you never need it. But you didn't fail if you just get evaluated.
Yeah, I think that's such a big thing, I mean, in my instance, it's like and I don't take disease modifiers, but that would be a failure for me. But yeah, by no means do I ever see people that do it as it being a failure. So I think it's, we just do what we can do as humans, and there's no right or wrong. There is just the journey that we're on, and we make things right or wrong, but there is no right or wrong. There is no rule book that things come down with. It's, all of that happens in here, right?
Yeah. I will say, before I move on here with the presentation, is I have seen so many people who have resisted. They've resisted. And then they might say, I've waited too long, or
Mm.
like it got too bad. And
Yeah.
that's just the thing I'm trying to say is you didn't fail. Don't be ashamed. Again, you can do something about it and always say, I don't need it. But we don't want to be in the situation where then we decide we need it and it's very, very dire and it's going to take another year. So,
Yeah.
all right. So let's move on. That's my little spiel. So, what I'm going to try to do, this is super introductory. This is not advanced. This is not clinical. I'm just going to give an introduction of how we can bridge science, quantum biology, spirit, and Chinese philosophy kind of all together surrounding the kidney. I didn't know that my kidney had specific meaning when I first got diagnosed with CKD. I didn't have a relationship with my kidneys. Now I have a relationship with every single one of my organs and especially my kidneys.
Love that.
In fact, in the beginning, I was like, why'd you do this to me? Why'd you go down and do this to me? I'm mad at you, right? But again, we don't think about that this is a part of us. Why are we rejecting when something goes wrong? Maybe there's a message in disguise that we don't like. But again, just creating that relationship of health. We talk about self-love all the time in this industry.
Mm-hmm.
You got to love the parts of your body that aren't functioning optimally as well.
Yeah.
Maybe even more.
Yeah.
So, right?
Mm.
So the gate of vitality, how your kidneys shape energy, will, and destiny. This was a little difficult one for me to make towards the end here. I'll share the specific part, but your kidneys are more than just physical organs. Across cultures and sciences, they are seen as energetic anchors, two anchors, grounding the spiritual, the metaphysical into your roots of this experience. Two little anchors. This presentation explores the kidney's role in our energy body, spirit, and health. I like the little DNA and the yin
I
yang.
bet
It's kind
too.
of
It's
like
awesome.
the science and I started using some artificial intelligence image makers. And so I used some of that for this. And it was actually because you can, I wasn't able to find a DNA and a yin yang.
No, that's not online stock for you. It's a regular download.
No, don't you know science and spirit are still broken up? They haven't got back together quite yet. So they're in a trauma bond.
Yeah, we've got an anxious attachment and avoidant there for sure.
That's right. That's right. So in Chinese medicine, the kidneys represent the root of life, or the Jing, a lot about life force, right? Again, the roots, the base chakra. How do you feel in your life? Do you feel safe, stable, secure in your life? What is your relationship like with your parents, your mother, your family lineage? Is it healthy? Do you have your basic needs met? Survival, right? If you don't have your basic needs met, you go into fight or flight, and then you have all that extra cortisol and then inflammation and blah, 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 blah. So these little anchors really represent the root of our life and how safe we feel in our root that governs growth, development, longevity, and adaptation. And anytime, I don't remember any time in history that I've been alive, which is not that long, but we're having to adapt like crazy. There's just wars and this and that. Like, it's just like the amount of emotional adaptation that's placed on us is actually really overwhelming. And you see people really disassociate, check out a reality. You can scroll through a social media platform, TikTok or something, and one video will be a beautiful woman applying makeup perfectly. And the next one is like bombing in Yemen and Iran. It's like,
Yeah.
this is it's so mentally trippy to have access to all that we do. And then just for the mind to digest that dichotomy of all that stuff.
So true.
Yeah. So they also house the willpower and regulate that yin yang balance, just like sodium and potassium. It's like all these little, calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium, copper. What's copper's twin.
Copper and zinc. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so fascinating how so much in our body comes in these pairs, and it's
Mm.
about balancing these pairs. So signs of kidney decline in TCM would be physical, energetic, and spiritual. Again, it's different understandings on different planes.
Oh, I love
Fatigue, low
it.
back, yeah, fatigue, low back pain, hearing loss, weak bones. Again, bones are your structure, your stability, how you handle the world, right? Whoa. It sounds like you have a wolf in your house. You do?
Got a great big Doberman and someone at the door, so he's doing his guard dog protection. So,
Okay, okay. You
but
need
if
to
you
get some
see him,
more.
he's got a great big pink pig in his mouth that he carries around. So when people come to the door, he's like wolf with a. It's huge. It's this big. It's a pink piggy, and I'm like, you
Oh,
are.
that's so
There's
cute.
nothing scary about you. So keep going.
That's so cute. Okay, so obviously we know there can be physical signs of decline, but again, let's kind of shift out of the normal way that we think. What are energetic signs of decline for kidney health? Loss of resilience, adaptability, and drive.
Mm.
When I see this, I get immediately like the goosebumps start coming because that stuff, the spiritual and energetic dimensions of my kidney issues were so subtle, and they were actually playing out prior to my physical manifestation.
That was my
And
next question. Did you notice these before the physical symptoms started?
I didn't have the awareness to articulate it exactly like this, but I went through a period before I got sick where somehow deep within my guts, like that deep gut feeling, I was like, something just isn't right. Something's missing. I felt like I was longing for something, but I didn't know what it was. And
Interesting.
I didn't realize till later that I think it was just my own authenticity and like this like spiritual growth that wanted to break through. But I literally was longing for something that I couldn't put a finger on. And I felt sad. I was like, is
It,
this going to be my life like this? Like, is this going to be it?
it's funny, isn't it? Because, and I don't want to take you away from your presentation, but you know what
Mm.
comes up to me as you say that is and we talk about the fine print in our contracts of like, where do we sign this for this chronic disease? But as you say that, I can hear the fine print. You know, it's like, well, of course you would manifest something because that was what was needed to almost satisfy this deep longing and craving that you had. And what I hear is that what you've gone through with everything you've gone through with the lupus and the kidney disease that was the answer to that very deep subconscious prayer. Yeah, I find that fascinating. I'm sure you've already put that together, but I just, it was like this click as you said that. It's this deep
Yeah.
yearning or calling in for something. And I don't know how the universe works on that quantum level, but I do sometimes wonder if it's like, engage kidney disease because this will give her exactly what she's asked for. And you're like, I changed my mind. No. But it's fascinating how that works because you were almost given you were given an opportunity. You were the one that turned it around. So let me phrase that properly because not everybody does that. But you were given a situation in which you could fulfill that.
Yeah. I mean, I like the phrase, the universe has shaken you to awaken you.
Yeah, well, I like that too.
Uh, looking back over my life, I'm like, oh, I was shaking quite a number of times, but I didn't always heed the call. I wasn't always courageous enough when the universe shook me prior.
Right.
When I had autoimmune disease, I almost died, and my kidneys failed, I couldn't run. I couldn't run from myself. I couldn't run from what was trying to birth out of me. That being said, this has come in an incredible amount of hindsight. I've made it to the other end,
Yeah.
so it's sometimes hard for people who are at a different place in the process to wrap their head around. And sometimes they're not even really that interested in this kind of stuff because it's still fight or flight.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think that if you can somehow adopt this kind of expanded perspective on the experience, not only can you find some more peaceful fulfillment within your life, even though your physical body is not optimally functioning, but again, you start to actually integrate your experience during the process rather than being in fight or flight and fear, and then hopefully getting through to the other end and then doing what I did. And it's taken another 10 years feeling like slightly depressed when I was supposed to feel my best, having to make meaning and understand and integrate my process, you know?
Yeah.
But I did. I had like energetically at a time in my life where my life appeared to look great on paper, right? Like married, yoga studios, nice little community, beautiful little home. Like on paper, when my life should have looked great, it was like there was this thing in my gut saying, is this why I came here?
Mm.
And it was like a sadness, but I couldn't make sense of it. I couldn't make sense of it. But now I know it was my spiritual awakening was coming, and there was nothing that I could do about it. Like, and
Yeah.
it totally changed me. And I mean, we talk about this all the time in the world of, alternative medicine. Is we all know that we've been fed quite a line, from the authorities, from our lineages, from the unhealthy dynamics, and we have to kind of recondition our way out of that. And this definitely put me on the fast track for sure. So, and then there's the spiritual dimension, which is again that diminished willpower, fear, and loss of purpose. So it's really common in Chinese medicine. I know you know this already, that fear somehow is an underlying root cause of kidney, these anchors of life.
Yeah.
So again, it's like, to me, when I read about this and I study this, I'm like, oh my gosh, it all makes total sense. It's
Yeah.
so obvious to me, but I also, I'm a little bit out there, and I'm a philosopher, and I want to understand. I want to learn. I think the body's amazing. I think this journey's amazing. Life's amazing. It's crazy. But I always behind my thoughts and feelings are, what can I learn from this? Why,
Mm.
what is happening? What am I learning from this? How am I changing from this? So again, I don't allow myself anymore to get caught up in the victim mentality. I've tried it a couple times in the past and never ended good, you
Nah, it
know,
doesn't
just
look good on you, huh?
not a good look. And then I ended up attracting a bunch of other people who wanted to just be a victim and complain about other things. And it's just a negative echo chamber is what it
Yeah.
is, right? So yeah, at some point the spiritual drive, the spiritual dimension of this is, I'm going to take lemons and make lemonade no matter what happens. And you're always able to hold these two dual perspectives, which is, all right, I got my physical life where a whole bunch of things are going to happen to me, and I'm going to have to figure out how to make it through the complexities that occur. And then this higher self, they call it, or the biggest self in the spiritual community is, okay, my higher self knows that it's all going to be fine. There's a
Mm-hmm.
beginning, there's an end, the body leaves, the consciousness stays alive. Like, and I'm learning here. It's just a different perspective, a different way of looking at it. But it's a way of looking at it that tends to somehow maintain health and resilience. If you don't take the spiritual purview, it's very easy to get caught in, oh, why me? I'm depressed. I'm a victim. Depression, anxiety, fear, like checking out, self-medicating. Like, if you don't hold that higher perspective, again, you're going to go on a journey, but it's going to be a little bit of a downward spiral pretty often. So
Yeah. No, I agree.
this is a cool picture. It's like Doctor
Yeah.
Strange. Okay,
Seriously.
so quantum biology and the kidneys. Kidneys are seen as quantum processors in the body, particularly of emotions and our feelings, right? And our fears and our trust. And so processors, which is kind of really interesting. I think most of us think, oh, processing only happens in my brain. And I think
Mm-hmm.
we're starting to learn that quantum biology is not just about what's going on within you. And in fact, it may be going on outside of you, which is so fascinating. So, also maintaining ionic gradients, filtering toxins, regulating energy flow. Again, just like kidneys scientifically are filtering, and they have this discernment of what do I filter and what do I keep. It's doing the same thing with energy. And this is when I work with clients very often. I don't do the scientific and the clinical, but I'll say, what sort of energy are you filtering out? And what sort of energy are you holding on to that may be toxic for you?
I love that.
Yeah. So it's very similar. It's just you're working on a different plane, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And people, they immediately understand. They're like, oh yeah, my mother-in-law, she's been driving me crazy. Like they know exactly what you mean when you say this.
Yeah.
So then also we talk about disruption affects the body's electromagnetic and quantum fields. So again, sounds very woo-woo to people. We're coming into the realization this is not woo-woo at all. So what is a biofield? It's a dynamic field of energy and information that surrounds and permeates living organisms. It organizes biological processes across scales, from subatomic particles to entire organisms, through electromagnetic and quantum interactions. Can you break that down a little more layman for our audience?
Yeah, so I guess in the realms of quantum biology and all of those sort of things, what we know now is that if we go right to the first original structures in humans, which is, the mitochondria are so fascinating because we started as organisms and then came up from there. And the mitochondria are probably our original connection to being an organism. So inside of every one of your cells, you've got these mitochondria, which are kind of like these, they come from bacteria. They're so fascinating. And they only come from your mother. Your DNA of your mitochondria only passed down through your maternal line, not paternal. You've got no paternal genes inside your mitochondria. And when they are functioning properly and do these crazy things called fourth phase and deplete deuterium, and they're working optimally, and you have to be in sunlight. So all this real quantum biology stuff. Yeah. They create biophotons. And what we know now is that cells don't communicate the way we think, which is this: they release a chemical that's got to go over there, anchor into a receptor site, and then evoke a chemical pathway or change. They do that, but when this is working properly to the biofield, your electromagnetics and quantum interactions, cells are quantum, meaning they happen faster than the speed of light or at the speed of light. And that is where cells exchange information via biophotons. But for that to be working, you need to make sure you're not having extreme exposure to the native electromagnetics, and that you're grounding and you've been outside. And it's why, quantum biology and quantum biology is so fascinating. So I guess what this is it's the body's optimal way of functioning, and it does do that. It does that all the time, but we don't have any science medicine that fits around and works with that, apart from what you're alluding to now. So yeah.
Yes.
And that has this bigger field. It's generating, those things generate these greater, bigger fields. So yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. We're both nerding out a little bit.
I love this stuff.
Okay, so this is like a very generic picture, but I like this picture. There's an author that I really love, Walter Russell. I don't know if you know who that is, but he wrote a whole bunch of books on light. Yes. And I think we're all coming to realize the sun, SONSUN, the sun is the way to God. Like that's the organizing principle, I think, of the coherence. But there's also a lot of things going on in the atmosphere or I don't know, geoengineering, all sorts of other things that may be interfering with our body, our biofield, right? We're not going to go there. We don't want to get censored. But so the subtle body and the biofield, the body is a field of energy and information. As I said, the kidneys influence the coherence of the biofield, which I think is what you were talking about. I think what we're coming to understand is that it's communication, like the way the cells communicate with what it needs, the sun, other cells in the environment, the intracellular fluid, like there's everything is about a healthy relationship, which is like so fascinating because you could just take it to the very deepest subatomic particle of us. And it's the same thing like with our partners. It's like there has to be this loving, harmonious way of communicating. And when something arises, to try to handle it as appropriately and lovingly as possible so it doesn't get metastasized literally and like get out of hand. So energetic imbalances may precede physical symptoms. And this is again what I was saying is in hindsight, I was learning, and as I was going through my physical illness, because I did have education in energetics from Anna Dea Judith, and I studied very extensively with Caroline Mace, who I really love a lot too. And really working with, Caroline works with a neuroscientist, I believe it is, and talks about the energetics of physical illness. And, you know, there is individuals who seem to be able to connect to information in a way that it's a little difficult. It's a language. I'm thinking of the movie Interstellar. It's just like coming through my mind right now. They receive, and they're receivers. They receive information and they can translate it because the spiritual dimension and the energetic dimension is higher, not necessarily hierarchical. It's just, it's that biofield isn't as clear. So it's a way of communicating that it has to be, it can get confused. You need the right person to communicate it with. I think sometimes it happens telepathically, but there's this receiver that gets information and it starts to trickle down through this process within the body, maybe in through the biofield. Then you've got all the systems of the body, right? And then it makes sense to me that the physical is actually the last representation. So when I think about this, and I've really studied this, I'm like, oh my gosh, I missed my disease process upstream at like 6 different places before it actually happened. Now it happened, and that's okay, because how I look and view at my life and my life with kidney disease, it's been more than half of my life, is that I've been fortunate to survive. So now because I missed those upstream measures, or doctors have at times, I wasn't tapping into my own subtleties, I can reverse engineer now kind of back up. So that's kind of what I'm doing. It's like I went down, right? I almost lost my life, lost my physical body. I've recovered, and now I'm trying to re-understand, and in hindsight, what did I miss? What were the subtle cues that I missed? And again, we don't want to diminish anyone out of their spiritual awakening if that's a part of their illness experience, but the spiritual awakening is going to happen anyway. And I would much rather a spiritual awakening occur through like a love relationship or love over fear. And for some reason, it just seems like now, you know, the world that we live in, a lot of us change based off of pressure, fear, and a sense of suffering. You know, in my mind, I'm like, I'd love to change because I'm in love so much, and then now I'll make the change. But typically that's not really how it happens. So
No, and just to add to what that diagram, which is great, and I'm going to butcher it, so I'm like, my brain's like, can I remember the exact thing? But you know, obviously I worked and studied with Dr. Joe for forever, and he talks about, I think it was people with bladder cancer, and well before the bladder cancer manifest in the body, there was a change in, I think it's frequency of the cells well before it happened, and they can measure that. And so and look, I'm butchering it, and I think it was Bose or someone like that was doing the research, but what they found was that there was a change in, I can't remember if it was polarity and I'll have to go and look it up, but there's a change in frequency that could be measured, and even people with cells that appeared healthy, there was no detection of bladder cancer whatsoever. They could measure this change that happened first, and they inevitably always ended up with bladder cancer. So the cells were signaling in a frequency well before it manifests. So yeah, they do. And it's, the reason partly because we don't see this in medicine and science is one, because no one's looking at it, and two, we don't have equipment to pick that up. So if you can't test and measure it, in some ways it's like it doesn't exist. But there are now, like you said, there are people that can do that, and there are sophisticated machines and things like that that can start to look for that stuff on that level. But yes, there's well and truly lots of documentation to prove the point of what you've just said, that there will be a energetic frequency change in the biosphere before the disease comes through all these different layers and anchors in the physical body.
That's right. I fully believe that. And yeah, we haven't caught up yet. Is it Tesla who says the medicine of the future will be with sound and
Frequency,
frequency,
sound and
right?
frequency. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I've experienced that with myself as a guinea pig. And I went through the transplant once, but then I had to go through it again, 12 years later. And when I went through it 12 years later, I was like, okay, I'm the guinea pig. And now I'm going to be the researcher observing my own energy. And I don't really recommend this, but I was really playing with my own frequency. And if I found myself wallowing or thinking negatively, it really started in the mind and the emotions. And it would be like almost immediately I would physically present with something. And I was like, wait. And then there were times where I would say, okay, consciously, like, let me shift my frequency. Let me remember who I am. Let me get back into my spiritual perspective. And just like that, the pain's gone. So it sounds crazy, but I actually think that there's something to it. And I'm sure there's a lot of people who are like, yeah, that totally happens with me too. Like if I change my mindset, the pain can go away. Now, I'm not saying it works for everybody. And this is where it can become dangerous isn't the right word, but
I know what you mean, yeah.
sometimes things are just meant to happen.
Yes.
Okay. And
Yeah.
if you can't change your frequency and heal your body, well, then guess what? Then you go through an experience like me and you get to become a scientific researcher from a different perspective of having the lived experience. So I do think that the frequency and changing the frequency is incredibly powerful. But again, you didn't fail. You're just getting a different experience if somehow you didn't get through it. And at the end of the day, remember, none of us are getting out of here alive with the physical body. So let's not get too attached, but let's also not diminish the fact that we can work with frequency and vibration, and we can work on healing our trauma and healing things about us that can offer us a better chance of being more healthy.
Yeah, 100%. I'm
You
glad
gotta
you said that.
you gotta look at it from both sides.
No, 100%. I mean, I've had more coherence healings than most people I know, and been in the world of, that sort of stuff. And I was never able to out frequency my stuff. And I had to really make sure that I had to re-narrate that I'm not a failure and it doesn't work on me thing. This is just my experience. I obviously signed up for a very physical one, and that's okay.
That's right. That's right. Me too. Who knows what's to happen? I do
Exactly.
think that things have gotten very biblical, very spiritual, and I think that there is an incredible power that we have yet to discover. And maybe there will be equipment or certain individuals who are able to hold a frequency that can do specific types of work with other people. But again, because this is so new and we're human, and we get a lot of charlatans out there too.
We do. We absolutely do.
So I always feel like at the end of the day, God's going to make it happen. I'm not going to make anything happen. Like all I
Sorry.
can do is show up in love and let God do the rest. Like I don't have that much power. So, okay.
Exactly.
So the spiritual dimension, kidneys anchor ancestral energy and destiny. And this was about the slide where I started to get a little bit kind of shaken up, because since my kidney experience, I've done a lot of work around my own ancestry and my relationship with my mother, my relationship with my father. And, I want to be very, very transparent with you, because I like to be transparent. I went on this article that I attached here, called The Gate of Vitality. Ming Men is the source of original chi. And it is an incredible article. And it talks about your lineage and men and destiny and fulfillment of destiny. And there has been something in my family line where there was incredible talent and offerings to go to college for free, a full ride, and something had happened that made them fear their destiny. And so in my bloodline and in other people that I speak to about this, it's like I have this thing in my family of unfulfilled potential that runs through my bloodline. It's like they weren't able to realize their potential for some reason. There was fear or something there. They kept themselves small to stay safer when there was a very big talent there. And this is so, obviously this is also a big part of myself, and my journey has been stepping out into my destiny after these blows of being severely ill and coming out in the world with being transparent with who I am, that I do work as an energy provider, but I've had these experiences and people can judge it and think it's very woo woo, but it's very interesting. Anybody who resonates with that, like having a lineage of unfulfilled potential and fear within yourself for your own destiny, it's a really great article. And, also, we all carry epigenetics, and we carry an epigenetic lifestyle from our parents, not just our epigenetics, but we do carry this epigenetic lifestyle. And so, as much as we don't want to blame our parents for our problems, there is something to look at within the ancestry and the line. And as with the kidneys, especially regarding a loss of purpose, a fear of your own confidence and destiny, staying safe and not wanting to really expand into your purpose. And again, that kind of existential crisis, loss of direction, or like I'm missing something and I feel it in my gut, but I'm afraid I'm just going to stay where I am. Like a settling, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, no, I don't. I definitely don't have that in my lineage, but it's really fascinating, isn't it? And how that would then, it makes sense relating to the kidneys, because that's such a deep fear that it actually stops chi and expression of who you are. So I can see how that very deep part that people may not be able to articulate in the way that you just did, but how if that was a rooted ancestral lineage experience, how that would stop chi flow through the kidneys, which is what they do, and how then that could manifest into dis-ease. So I can see from an energetic point of why that makes so much sense. So yeah, it's fascinating.
So deep, so deep to access. I was reading too that the meridian, the time for the kidneys, the physical time for the kidneys is between 5 and 7 p.m.,
Yes.
I think it was.
Yeah.
And just this past week, I've been adopting this ritual where between the time of 5 and 7, I kind of go into a slower pace, ritualistic, honoring of my body type of mode. If I'm eating during that time, I'm very mindful of my cooking and sitting down and moving very slow and very yin-like. There's a lot of information in Chinese medicine too around the kidneys, where there's this persistent dampness. And I feel too that somehow I cannot make the entire process chart linear. I mean, I could try, but I think it's all somewhat connected. I think there is a through line or a thread between these dimensions. And it just would be so cool to see like the spiritual dimension, the energetic dimension, like the quantum, the biofield, and all the way down, endocrine, nervous system. Like, it would just be so interesting to see, how did this kidney disease actually come down into
Yeah.
being?
Yeah, and
You know?
was it there even before? Was the imprint, when you talk about family lineage, it was the imprint there when you were born? So the energy was there, and it just has to have the right environment to awaken it. And then it comes right back to matrix stuff, like what is free will? Like, were you given, the certain parents that you had that would awaken this because that was part of what it is? I love that line in the second matrix where the oracle says, he's like, he's like, you already know if I'm going to take the candy. He said, then, do I even get to make a choice? She said, you're not here to make a choice. You've already made the choice. You're here to understand it. And I love that line.
Exactly. And that's exactly how I felt when I was able to go through my transplant the second time. I was like, okay, the first time I went in, I was in the direct experience, blind, not knowing what was happening, right? In the survival, in the fight or flight. But then the second time I went through it, it was like, okay, I have an idea of what to expect. So now I'm going to really observe it and really study it. And I did feel like I was able to reverse engineer going through it the second time. So I felt like I was kind of going backwards, like you're talking about with the spoon. It was so interesting. So yeah. All right. So bridging science and spirit, we know all about this stuff. Your program talks a lot about all of this. There's another great website I linked there, down at the bottom, that had a lot of great information. Just,
Oh, cool.
yeah, it's really great, helping people to understand these different dimensions. And again, remember, when you have CKD, it was this way too in the beginning. When I first had it, I was like, where's the video that's just going to tell me what to do to help me feel better and get out of here?
Yeah.
Like, that's all I
Where's
wanted.
that video? Why is it not? Why has no one made this?
It'd be viral in,
Yep.
in an hour. Like, just give me the pill because I'm done with this.
Mm-hmm.
And all of this stuff kind of teaches you how to live with it in some sort of an embracive, loving way, which is just, it seems so inverted from, kind of the environment that we live in, which is when something's wrong, like, I gotta kill it and we gotta get out of here. Like, it's just, it's just a different way of looking at life. And you talking about polarity, it is like that. It's the ability to take something that makes you want to feel a particular way, and instead you catch it, you grab it before you let that feeling take over. You see it, you grab it, and you say, I'm going to use my mind and my perception, to bring in a more loving way to deal with this, rather than it letting the fear control me. I'm gonna flow, And I think sometimes we have a hard time discerning, when do I fight and when do I surrender? And again,
Absolutely. I struggle with this every day.
it's true. Me too. It's the same. It's like the duality of the 3D. It's like the sodium and potassium and the yin and the yang. And it's the balance of life, is like, when do I say, no, I got to get up and fight? Or like, I got to let go of this rope. My hand's bleeding. It's like, literally, I think it's part of just our existence here, is to, be mindful and discern of what to do when. And in my past, particularly before I got sick, I realized I was always doing them out of order, because I was not self-aware. I had all of this baggage and patterning and stuff running through my system from, culture to whatever it may be, that when I should have let go, I was gripping on for dear life. And when I should had been fighting, I was fleeing. Now that was kind of like attachment disorder stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And it comes down to, well, you tell me, but I know for me, it also came down to, it's that deep intuitive trust, right? Like, there is a guidance system in that, but this is part of my problem with the medical stuff, and it's not so much these days, but you know, in the generations, we're sort of the last generation with the Gen X's, where we had medicine on a pedestal. Medicine knew better than us. It overrode our deep intuition or inner knowing, and we would hand that power over, sometimes rightly and sometimes incorrectly. And then, yeah, I think when you have that deep inner knowing and connection, trust, and often you have to go through something like we've been through, a chronic disease, to really anchor into that. But if you don't have that, it's very easy just to not trust and run from the things that you might need to anchor into, and hold on to the things that you might need to let go of, I think, when you're disconnected from that inner knowing.
I think that's part of the collective awakening that we're going through right now in humanity, is that,
Sure.
oh my gosh, I should have done this when I've done this, and I should have done this when I did this. And oh, now I see the systems, the particular systems of power who are taking advantage of me doing the wrong thing.
Yeah, well, I think COVID was, and you know, I don't want to get into the whole vax thing, but I think COVID is such a great example of, at least in Australia, and I'm in Melbourne, so I'm in the most locked down city in the world, and watching what that has done to people's ability to trust authority. Of when we were told this was all best, and now that research has come out and gone, actually, and you know, the forced, you know, people losing their jobs and things, about having autonomy taken away from people being able to make decisions and using leverage about pay and work and things like that, and going, actually, that's really not cool. Like, yeah, how can you take away people's, you know, choice of what happens to their body? But so many people did, and now people are looking back, and I mean, I'm probably a little bit biased because I work with so many people that have injuries from things that happened during that time. And so I tend to see that side. So, you know, this isn't a balanced opinion in many ways. But yeah, it's interesting. And the thing that people will say is, I knew that it was the wrong thing to do. I knew it wasn't right for me, yet I did it anyway because people in authority and power were telling me either it was okay or I felt like I was given no choice. So I find that whole narrative of what you're right, the collective consciousness waking up to that. And, you know, in a big part, it's what we went through, you know, in 2020, 21. Yeah, it's fascinating.
Almost 5 years ago already. And, you know, it's interesting. I was on an X Spaces group today, and it was an academic, and, you know, she was talking about the narrative of, okay, I think what everybody needs to do right now is really go within and really reorient yourself. And in my mind, I was listening and watching, and I was like, okay, I understand what she's saying, because she has been externally in academia, and she's encouraging the people who have been more extroverted to go within. But I also know too that there have been a lot of people who are more introverted, and they've done a lot of inner work. And it almost seems like those, I don't know. And for some reason, it's like the Gen X generation is going to, I don't know, somehow bring us home or something, save us. I don't know. But a lot of people have been doing the introspective work. And now they need the courage and bravery to actually step out and fight, I think, because they have a sense of they have a balance point within them. This kind of they've kind of zero pointed themselves out a little bit, and they can come forth with not from their ego, and be really self-aware. So it's kind of funny, because we have to, at this point, do we surrender? Do we fight? It depends on the individual, but both are needed right now.
100%. And that's, you know, it comes back to what you and I always talk about, individualized medicine. What is some person's poison will be someone else's medicine. You know, it's so individual. And so there is no, you know, what I was talking about before was totally fine for some people. People had no reaction, and then other people, no. And it's that, you know, that ability to be self-guided, and why it's so important to be connected to that. And then, as you're saying, move forward and advocate in that space for yourself, and externalize it, and be a balanced being where it doesn't come from ego, where it comes from just a deep sense of knowing. And I feel like at least I've been lucky in my journey navigating chronic disease. And, you know, some people might say I haven't done it well, because, you know, some stuff's hard, but, you know, any decision I make around, am I going to take a disease modifying drug? Am I going to take this particular vaccine? Am I going to do something? It's always been, that decision has always been very self-guided. And from that point of view, I have no regrets about my journey. My journey's been perfect because it has always been an autonomous, connected one. And so therefore I can say it's okay. I can surrender it. And I don't need to blame anybody or do anything, apart from my horse that bucked me off and stood on me, but maybe there's even deeper one in there. But, you know, like I can say it's okay because I do feel like every decision I made was one that was connected and came deep from within inside me. And so whether the outcome looks not maybe the way I wanted it to or whatever, I'm like, it's okay. So I think that's important for people to get to that point, because then it does become a very empowering journey, and hopefully you're balanced enough to go regardless of what it looks like. And, you know, I'm not great at this all the time, not beat myself up for not making other stuff. But when I go back and redo it and I'm like, would I do anything differently knowing what I know now? I'm like, no, I wouldn't change it. Because every part of my being screams at me, yes, no, yes, no. And so, yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing, Fiona. I love that story. And I think you're right. I think there's a lot of individuals who were facing something prior to the pandemic that already had them questioning the running narratives. They might not have had it all figured out, but for instance, like me, I was going through chronic illness for 10 years prior to the pandemic, and I was already very mindful about my autonomy within the process. So when things came forth and were very, very rushed, I was like, well, hold on. I tried some of this stuff back in the day, very harmed from it. So if people didn't have that experience, I can see how they maybe feel bamboozled and just kind of like blindly trusted. And then I also, you know, saw other people, everybody was different, but I saw actual providers, doctors saying things like, I can't wait to get, you know, the vaccine because I just want to travel, travel, travel. And I'm like, okay, there's a totally different motivation.
Yes. Yeah.
So very interesting, very interesting. So supporting kidney, obviously I have you there at the bottom there, thekidneycoach.com. Herbs, acupuncture, nourishing foods, mindful living, science, hydration, rest, stress management, spirit, reconnect to purpose, nurture your willpower, and honor your roots.
Oh, I love that one.
Yeah. And then the last one I have here, which really, this is the one that really struck me because I could really look back at my sickest and I can see myself going down, right? So usually, unless it's acute kidney injury, chronic kidney disease, it's like you're just getting sicker, slower and slower. Unless kidney coach didn't exist when I needed you, but I wasn't, you know, I was just listening to the doctors and I was just slowly like going down. And it was just, I mean, this last one really hit me. And I think part of my spiritual path gave me this opportunity and lens to see life from this big S self perspective, this observer, and really be able to walk through life without a fear of death. But I think what happened was, during my kidney disease, when it was the worst, I started to lose my will to live. Because what happened was I saw this. What was happening was it was surrendering. I think my balance was off. I was surrendering a little too much when at that time I should have said, let's keep going. I should have had a little more fight in me at that moment that I'm recalling. I was surrendering too much, and I was saying, well, like, my life has been hard.
It's hard when your willpower's gone, though, isn't it? Like, how do you reconcile that as part of, as you've mentioned, the kidneys, you lose a bit of willpower. Like, how do you reconcile that? And what turned for you? Because you obviously did start to fight. So what was that about?
I think what happened was, because I started to, and this is the other thing, doing this presentation today, I was realizing, you know, we talk about depression or anxiety or losing our will to live or, existential crisis or loss of purpose, it really can be just coupled with the disease process itself. It's just something that can kind of go hand in hand. And I think part of my second transplant was me decoupling the trajectory and kind of pulling it apart. I'm probably doing something like two cells. Like I feel like I'm like I was pulling the like easy feelings that would go along with my situation, which kind of is almost like the victim mentality. It's like people saying like, well, you have kidney disease, of course you'd be depressed. Of course you'd be fearful. Of course you'd have anxiety. Like people affirming these really dense emotions that actually weren't helping my process at all. But like the system, the medical system was actually affirming that energy. Oh yeah, you will be depressed. You will be anxious. Oh, you will be this. So the second time I was like, no, wait,
Not doing
hold
that
on.
again. Been there, done that. Let's do something different.
Can I deal with a physical issue and still not lose that spiritual light within me that reminds me that I'm whole exactly as I am? Can I not let that other energy overshadow the fact that I'm here in earth school. This is very temporary. We're a spiritual being having a physical experience. Can I keep just that light alive? Whereas in the system, it's like everything about me going through my kidney journey was about affirming the shadow.
Affirming you had kidney disease. It's an interesting. Well, I think it's really important for people to hear. I'd love you to say that again because I feel like that is such a takeaway that you had. It's like, how do I keep my light? How do I keep my balance, my connection, my bigness, and the physicality in going through this? And it sounds to me like it was that continual questioning that really just moved you out of that, the bogginess. And so I feel like that is such an amazing insight for people to get. And a question, I'd almost say sticky note it and shove it on your bathroom window. It's like, how do I keep my light through this experience? I'm surmising what you said, but it's such a poignant and beautiful question to ask yourself every day as you move through something that seemingly looks like a quicksand patch.
Yeah, this picture, this popped up and I was like, oh, this is how I'm trying to describe this. It was like the picture on the left, which is the black and white, was like, that's how I felt modern medicine wanted me to kind of experience my disease, which was like, okay, your kidneys, your roots are dying. They're not looking that healthy. And then your life it's suffering, it's struggling, it's hard, you're gonna need a lot of help. And then I had no life. But when I went through my transplant the second time, I understood the physical repercussion that was going to happen to me. I understood, being on dialysis and what my energy level is going to be, this and that. But somehow I was like, I'm not tapping into that story. Like, I know that there is a spiritual part of this process, and I'm going to go through my kidney failure and still honestly and authentically tap into my aliveness, which is the first time I lost my willpower and I lost my will to live. And I was like, I became very meek. I was not fighting when I should have been fighting. I was surrendering too much to what everybody else told me about kidney disease. And the second time I was like, it's not going to happen this way. And I was able to physically experience kidney disease, but keep my mindset the majority of the time in gratitude and love and appreciation. I was looking at everything that was alive instead of looking at everything that was bad and dead.
Hence the picture. Yeah, yeah. Such an amazing, in some ways, again, I said this earlier in the thing where you talked about feeling like there was something missing and is this all? And then, of course, poof, you end up with the everything that you went through. And then it's almost like the second time it was for this. It was like, okay, you've mastered the physical side of it. You got through that. Now, Stephanie, you must go back and do it all again. Go back there, but this time you're going to do it. Like I mean, I don't know. Again, I don't pretend to be an expert in knowing how this crazy universe and everything in it works, but you can sort of see in your experience of how you go through it, like I can see the perfection in it. And I know when you're in the middle,
I'm telling you,
nothing perfect about it, but I can see it.
I'm telling you, the first time I went through it, I did it the traditional healthcare's way.
Yeah.
I just gave over my autonomy to everything they told me about the process and everything they normalized about it. I just, it's so weird how I did that, because I really wasn't that type of person, but I can see looking back how I had to just completely forget myself and do everything they said, and what that felt like, and the devastation and the difficulty and the depression, and just like, and then the second time I went through it, I was like, I'm going to do this my way.
That,
And
which is so much more you. That's so much more authentic of at least how I know you, right?
I'm going to do it my way. And that doesn't mean I'm going to be a rebel and say, well, I'm not going to do anything. Like, I'm not, hello, I'm not, but everything was running through my filter appropriately now. I was using the discernment. Okay, I like what you're saying here, doctor. Like, yes, okay, I'm hearing you. You're an expert at surgery, or like, okay, yep, That, not so much, and then learning with different providers, like who to break out my judo moves on, and like not let their fear try to take me back to that story that
Mm.
they think is the story for people going through kidney disease, and not looking at anybody individualistically, like really on the whole saying like, this is an awful process and it's going to be challenging and you're going to need this. My second time was so weird. It was like my pain was so much less. My brain just only allowed me to focus on CKD like maybe 20% of the time. Whereas the first time it was 150% of the time.
Mm.
That's all was in my mind. So the mindset and just really claiming your own story, I think, can change everything. The pain, the emotion of it, and definitely the recovery and the reintegration afterward. Yeah.
Fascinating. I mean, it's why you're so well positioned to help people. Like you say, you wish there was a you. And I listen to anyone listening to this going through, especially the difficult parts of it, looking at transplant, but even the early part, like getting an understanding and having the ability to rewrite the narrative around that and then using that to guide you going forward. I just think that's priceless. Like, why wouldn't you sit down with someone like you that's, double, I would call you a double black belt with it, and just having someone help you, or soundboard that stuff off to give the meaning, or where the willpower should turn on and where you need to surrender. I just can see how invaluable that is and how that played out. But yeah, I know, yeah, I know at least you're on the other side, so I can say it now. You'd never say it.
I am. And you know what? I don't know what my future holds, Fiona.
No,
I'm two transplants in. Now transplants don't last forever. I don't know how many transplants I can get, but I'm at a place where I just feel so mature in my life experience to just not fear. I finally feel like I've overcome the fear.
love that for you.
I love it for me too. I love it for me too. And there's just nothing that's going to show up in my reality where I feel like I don't have the strength and the resilience to face it head on and to not run away and to truly face it. So for anybody watching, this is your story. It's your story. When you have an illness, a lot of times the medical system wants to make your illness their story. So again, just remember, you're a huge part of your story. So again, they always say you end up doing that which you needed, or they always say that. And sitting here, like retrospectively, like hearing me tell this story and looking at the person that like I actually could have needed, it gives me such a solace and such a sense of peace just to know that in my lifetime, that which I needed is now available for others.
I love that too. I mean,
It's so peaceful for me.
yeah, I bet it is. Yeah, I can't really add to that, or I will butcher it, but I feel the energy of that. It's just like you've become what you didn't have when you went through it.
Yeah. And found what I needed in others.
Yeah.
So it's again, to me, I do feel that, I don't know how the universe works, Fiona, either, but it's very clear that there is some sort of divine guidance.
Annoyingly, it really is. What's the saying? The universe is always working for you, always, even when you think it's not. It's my morning mantra. The universe is always working for me.
Oh my gosh, I know. And I've realized so many times that, again, like I said earlier, that we don't like to change as humans. And as much as I talk about transformation and change, I've made a lot of change in my life and I'm tired. I don't want to keep making that kind of change. So I do
Yeah.
feel compassion for people who have a difficult time thinking about change and transformation. CKD is going to change you, whether you like it or not. And again, just try to remember that this ride is also for you, just like you said. So
Yeah, I love it. Thank you.
you're
Well,
welcome.
if anyone's out there thinking, oh my goodness, I need to connect with this goddess and have her help me guide me through my journey, I'll put in a link below. You can find a link on kidneycoach.com and then go down to resources and coaching. We're actually about to launch, but actually probably by the time this has gone live, our new website will be up. So you'll see.
Awesome.
Yeah, I need to actually send you the link. So you'd be able to book straight in with Stephanie there. I think it's on the front page. You can do that. You can check which journey you want, so you can connect with Stephanie there. And I'll also put a link to her private website. If you want to know more about what we do, head over to www.kidneycoach.com. You'll find us on Instagram and Facebook under there. We are pumping out free information every day. We've got obviously the podcast, heaps of free information there, and then we're writing articles as well. So yeah, there's lots of resources available around for you to connect with a deep community and see what we're up to. Remember to hit subscribe and like, that way you'll get notified anytime we put up more content. Stephanie will be back to do another podcast. I'm always excited to see what topic she comes up with next. She's always very thoughtful and thorough in putting together her amazing presentation. So Stephanie, thank you for being you and being a guiding light to our community. It is, I'm very grateful for everything that you decided to sign on that crazy contract before you came in.
Yes.
We thank you for that.
Yes. I thank God for keeping me here. That's for sure. So
Yes,
I can appreciate it. And thank you for having me on.
Of course, I love you.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks everybody for being part of our community. We look forward to seeing you next time. If there's a topic that you would like Stephanie to speak to, as part of the journey that you've gone through, please put it in the comments. We're always open to that. So again, thank you for listening. We'll look forward to seeing you next time. Stephanie, as always, thank you. Bye.